بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد سيد الأولين والآخرين وحبيب رب العالمين. I remind you and myself to make the intention sincerely for the sake of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. So Musa alayhi salam gave al-KhaDir as-salam, and so al-KhaDir said wa alaykum as-salam and took the cover that was over his head, that was on his head, off. So there are many narrations about what happened next. Some narrated that al-KhaDir said that, how is it that I hear the salam in a place such as this, where people usually do not say the salam, because in that particular area there were no Muslims at that time. So Musa alayhi salam said, Ana Musa, that I am Musa alayhi salatu wassalam. And like this they spoke to each other. So Musa alayhi salatu wassalam said, جئت لتعلمني مما علمت رشدا, that I have come so that you can teach me some of what you know. So then it's narrated that al-KhaDir said, أما يكفيك أن التوراة بيديك وأن الوحي يأتيك, that you, O Musa, you have revelation. Allah chose you and revealed to you and gave you at-Tawrah. You have at-Tawrah. So then he said, إنك على علم من علم الله علمكه الله لا أعلمه, that you have knowledge that Allah has granted you that I do not know. وأنا على علم من علم الله علمنيه لا تعلمه, and there is knowledge that Allah has granted me that you do not know. So then Musa alayhi salam mentioned, هل أتبعك على أن تعلمني مما علمت رشدا, can I accompany you? And this is how it is. This is how a person should do. Like I said, we'll speak more about this, but to accompany someone who is pious, to accompany a pious person, because one learns not only from their speech but from their actions, from the way that they react or don't react to things. This is a very effective way of learning and creating good habits. So al-KhaDir mentioned to him, لن تستطيع معي صبرا, that you will see things from me that you will not be able to stay quiet about, because you haven't been granted certain types of knowledge or certain bits of information that I have been given. So you will see them apparently to be one thing, but underlying will be something else. And this is true because Musa alayhi salatu wassalam, he was judging the matters according to what he apparently saw. He is the messenger of Allah at that time, and legislation has been revealed to him. So he applies those laws. Allah Ta'ala had revealed to al-KhaDir that Musa alayhi salam is like all prophets, like all pious people. If they see something that is apparently not right, they will call it out. And he said to him, وَكَيْفَ تَصْبِرُ عَلَى مَا لَمْ تُحِطْ بِهِ خُبْرًا. That there are things that you have not experienced, that you don't have knowledge about, hence why you've come to me. The Prophet ﷺ is reported to have said, يَرْحَمُ اللَّهُ مُوسَى لَوَدِدْتُ أَنَّهُ كَانَ صَبَرَ حَتَّى يَقُصَّ عَلَيْنَا مِنْ أَخْبَارِهِمَا. The Prophet ﷺ said, how I wish that Musa ﷺ had been able to be even more observant than he was, so that he could have told us more, so that more would have been revealed to us about the doings of al-KhaDir and what he does and how he does. There are narrations even that, weak narrations. So when I say weak, it doesn't mean fabricated, it doesn't mean made up. When we say weak, it doesn't mean made up. All that means is that we can't take a religious judgment from it, like saying, oh, because of this hadith, something is haram. Or because of this hadith, something is, this is a judgment of it, it's obligatory. We can't do that with weak hadiths. But what we can do with weak hadiths is narrate things that are stories and narrate things about things being very rewardable, things having a merit. We can do that, as was mentioned by both An-Nawawi and Ibn Salah. There are weak hadiths about how al-KhaDir visited Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. There are many hadiths like this. And remember, they're not fabricated, they're not made up hadiths. If there was a fabricated hadith, then we wouldn't mention it. We'd just say, this is made up, it's not real. And just to note, a hadith is something that is attributed to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. A hadith, something that is attributed to him alayhi salatu wasalam, might be correct, it might be attributed to him and it's true, and it might be attributed to him and it's a lie. Someone's made it up. Okay? So we can call it a false hadith, a made up hadith. Just because it's called a hadith doesn't mean that it's true. Okay? So, Musa alayhi salam followed al-KhaDir. And also, just to be absolutely clear, this doesn't mean now, we will hear about al-KhaDir alayhi salam doing certain things. It doesn't mean that he was doing things that were haram. And it doesn't mean also, just to give you an example of people living nowadays, even people who are among the awliya nowadays, they do things, but they don't go against the laws that were revealed to Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. It's not the case that it's one rule for us and a different rule for them. One type of Islam for us and another type of Islam for them. It's not like that. So some misguided people nowadays, they might say to you, if you see them not praying, or if you see them doing something haram, like shaking the hand of a marriageable woman, or something else that is haram, they might say to you, oh, you don't understand, because you haven't reached that level. No, this that you're doing, you're not a prophet. And this was the rule that was mentioned to us by Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. I have as much right as following that and upholding it as you do and should do. So some people who do sinful things, they try to hide under this statement by saying, you don't understand, as though they've reached such a high level that there are different rules for them. No, this is not true. This is not true. The Prophet came with one Islam, and these rules apply to all people. So they got to a boat that belonged to some masakin, some poor people. And this was a boat that they were using to earn money. In whatever way that they would do that, they would earn money by doing it. So it had been revealed to al-KhaDir alayhi salam that there is a king that takes the boats that he likes, he takes them, he steals them. So what al-KhaDir did was he broke part of the boat in a way that could be easily mended later, but in a way that if somebody saw it, they would think that it's worthless. There's no point, it's going to sink. So they wouldn't take it. So the people that were appointed by that evil king, they would disregard it and say, leave it. So then those brothers, those people, those masakin, the poor people, they could easily fix it and continue using it. In one narration, the narration of An-Nasa'i, al-KhaDir said, فَأَرَدْتُ أَنْ أَعِيبَهَا حَتَّى لَا يَأْخُذَهَا. I wanted, or the reason when he explained to Musa alayhi salam later, I wanted to dismantle it, or rather break a piece of it, so that that king doesn't take it. وَكَانَ وَرَاءَهُمْ مَلِكٌ يَأْخُذُ كُلَّ سَفِينَةٍ غَصْبًا. As is mentioned in the Quran, this Malik, this king used to take these items. In one narration, فَإِذَا جَاءَ الَّذِي يُسَخِّرُهَا, that those people that the king had appointed, if one of them comes, وَجَدَهَا مُنْخَرِقَةً, they would find it to be broken, defected. فَتَجَاوَزَهَا, so he would leave it. فَأَصْلَحُوهَا بِخَشَبَةٍ, and then the poor people would be able to fix it with one plank of wood, with a single plank of wood. They came to a young man who at this time was not a believer, or rather it was revealed to al-KhaDir alayhi salam that this young man will not believe in the future. If he was to stay alive, then he would not believe in Islam. He would not be a Muslim. Had he lived to become pubescent, he would become a kafir. And both of his parents were Muslims. So it was revealed to al-KhaDir alayhi salam that if he was to live, he will spoil his parents, he will ruin his parents, he will drown his parents in sins, and al-kufr would be feared for them as well. So for this reason, he was killed. For this reason, he was killed. And Musa alayhi salam was watching this. So al-KhaDir, he acted as Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala ordered. And Allah revealed in the Quran that these two parents were given something better. It's mentioned that they were given a daughter. And this daughter of theirs married a prophet. And then this prophet, they had children. And among those children were other prophets. Some scholars mentioned Yunus alayhi salam, Yunus ibn Matta, that he came from this. That he came from this. The lesson was from this particular story that his parents, they were pleased the day that this child was born. And they were saddened the day this child died. But Allah eternally knew that had this child remained alive, then he would be their destruction. So what is upon every person is to accept what Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has ordained and not to object to Allah. To love what is good and to hate what is haram. Then they came to a wall, both Musa alayhi salam and al-KhaDir. Came to a wall that underneath which there was a treasure belonging to two orphans. Their father had passed away. This wall, it started to break in places. So al-KhaDir alayhi salam, without seeking any help from anybody else, without hiring someone to rebuild the wall, he started to rebuild this wall. And he explained later that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala had willed for these two children, these two orphans who were at this time non-pubescent, for them to find this treasure, for them to find this gold that their father had left for them. It belonged to them. Had he not reconstructed the wall, then someone else would have found it and taken it from them. So Allah ordered al-KhaDir alayhi salam to reconstruct this wall. Then here is the biggest proof for those that said that al-KhaDir alayhi salam is a prophet. That when he explained to Musa alayhi salam that this is why I did all these things. As the story is in the Quran, he did the first matter, then Musa alayhi salam had forgotten that Musa alayhi salam had said that I will follow you and I won't ask about the things you do. I'll just watch. Because al-KhaDir mentioned to him, لا تسألني عن شيء. Don't ask me about anything until I explain it to you. So Musa alayhi salam had said, forgot, and so he said, what is this? Why did you do that? Why did you do that? Because Musa alayhi salam was eager to learn. So after al-KhaDir explained all these things to him, he said, as Allah revealed in the Quran, وَمَا فَعَلْتُهُ عَنْ أَمْرِي. Meaning that I didn't do it on my own accord. I didn't do it out of my inherent desire. Just me. It wasn't just because I wanted to do it. Rather, it was because I was ordered. So here the scholar said, ordered by who? Ordered by Allah. So it shows that al-KhaDir alayhi salam received revelation. Because he said, مَا فَعَلْتُهُ عَنْ أَمْرِي. I didn't do it from myself. Rather, the scholar said this means that revelation came to him. Then he said, ذَلِكَ تَأْوِيلُ مَا لَمْ تَسْطِعْ عَلَيْهِ صَبْرًا. That these are the things that you had asked about, O Musa. So then after this, Musa alayhi salam left. Al-Hafiz al-Nawawi said, واستدل العلماء بسؤال موسى السبيل إلى لقاء الخضر صلى الله عليه وسلم على استحباب الرحلة في طلب العلم. That the scholars used as a proof that Musa alayhi salam asked Allah to go and meet al-KhaDir so that he could learn from him, They took from this that it's recommended for a person to travel to learn the religious knowledge. One of us might say, oh, I want to meet al-KhaDir, alayhi salam. Ask yourself why. To take a notebook and take notes? To learn the religious knowledge? To ask all the religious questions, or just to say, oh, so how did you feel when you saw the spring of life? So what does al-Qarnayn look like? Did you see Ya'juj and Ma'juj? Why would one want to travel to meet al-KhaDir? What is their intention? The intention of Musa alayhi salam was to learn the religious knowledge. So al-Nawawi said it is recommended. We learn from this that it's recommended for a person to travel. It's okay, it's good to travel to learn religious knowledge. And it's also recommended al-istikthar minhu, to gain more knowledge, to want to gain more knowledge. This is a messenger of Allah, and he wanted to gain more knowledge about some of the things that he didn't know about, although he was greater in status. And also, this teaches us that النووي said وأنه يستحب للعالم وإن كان من العلم بمحل عظيم أن يأخذه ممن هو أعلم منه. That a person, even if he has a lot of knowledge, even if you know a lot about a certain case in the religion, then it is okay and it's good, it's humbling also to take from somebody who doesn't know as much as you, but they know that thing that you do not know. So one would humble themselves. And he said, وَفِيهِ فَضِيلَةُ طَلَبِ الْعِلْمِ وَفِي تَزَوُّدِهِ الْحُوتِ وَغَيْرُهُ. That we learn from this that a person, if they travel to seek the religious knowledge, then he said it's good for them to eat fish. Allah knows best. وَفِي هَذَا الْحَدِيثِ الْأَدَبُ مَعَ الْعَالِمِ. And in this hadith, we see the great manners that Musa alayhi salam displayed with this prophet. And every prophet is obviously scholarly. They have great knowledge. Al-Hafiz ibn Hajar mentioned in Al-Fatah, in Fath al-Bari, he said that there were many people that met al-KhaDir, and he gave some examples. He said that it was narrated that one of the pious people in the past said, رَأَيْتُ رَجُلًا يُمَاشِي Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz was one of the khulafa, one of the caliphs in the Umayyad period, min al-Umayyin. So you had Muawiyah, Yazid, Muawiyah, and then the rest of these caliphs. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz was a pious person. He was a mujtahid like a Shafi'i, like Al-Imam Malik and Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Abu Hanifa, and so on. And he was a pious person. So someone said, I once saw a man walking with Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, معتمدا على يديه. فلما انصرف قلت له من الرجل. When this man, when the man left, I said to Umar ibn Abdul Aziz radiyallahu anh, who is this man with you? So Umar ibn Abdul Aziz said, رأيته? Did you see him? قلت نعم. He said, yeah, I saw him. Who was that? قال أحسبك رجلا صالحا. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz said, radiyallahu anhu, I believe that you are a pious person. But just a note, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz is different to the second Khalifa, Umar ibn al-Khattab. So we have Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu, Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu. This Umar is different. He came many years later. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. So Umar ibn Abdul Aziz said to this person, أحسبك رجلا صالحا. I believe you are a pious person because you were able to see this person. He said, ذاك أخي al-KhaDir. This was my brother in Islam, al-KhaDir. بشرني أني سأولى وأعدل. He informed me that I would be given rule, I would be made the Khalifa, and that I would be a just Caliph. So how is that? Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala gives some of the knowledge of the ghaib, some of the knowledge of the unseen matters to the prophets. This is true. And al-Hafiz ibn Hajar said, لا بأس برجاله, that this hadith is a strong hadith. لا بأس, that there's no problem with the men in the chain, meaning it's fine. And likewise, there are other narrations. Ibn Asakir, he mentions with a sahih chain from Abu Zur'ah al-Razi, another scholar. He said that he saw, while he was a young man, he saw a man who warned him. To somebody he didn't know. He saw a man, while he was young, he saw a man that said to him, don't keep going to the leaders in the government. Don't keep going to them, because they might use you, they might manipulate you, they might want something from you and make you do something haram. Don't keep going to them. He said, أنه رأى وهو شاب رجلا نهاه عن غشيان أبواب الأمراء. Told him, don't go to these people. ثم رآه بعد أن صار شيخا كبيرا على حالته الأولى. And then he said that when I became really old, I saw the same person. So maybe some 60 years later, he said, I saw the same person على حالته الأولى, upon the state that he was upon, in the exact same condition, as though he didn't age a day. فنهاه عن ذلك أيضا. He said that he warned me against that again. قال فالتفت لأكلمه فلم أره. Said then I turned to speak to him, but I didn't see anybody. فوقع في نفسي أنه الخضر. And so in my heart I believe that it was al-KhaDir. This was narrated, many of these occurrences were narrated. For example, as I mentioned, once the Prophet ﷺ heard something in the masjid, so he told our master Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu anhu, go and see who that is. Go and see who that is, that person, and tell him to make dua for me. So Anas ibn Malik, he went to do that. And then later the Prophet ﷺ said this was al-KhaDir. There are many narrations in this regard. Some of the companions, it was said that they met al-KhaDir, like Sayyiduna Ali radiyallahu anhu. And Prophet al-KhaDir taught him a dua. Sayyiduna Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu. Sayyiduna Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma. It is said that they met al-KhaDir. Like this, there are always things that are happening. There are always things that are happening that relate to the awliya, that relate to extraordinary matters. You should see some of the things that some of the scholars said about Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, and how when he descends, how it is that he will know the rules of the religion in the nation of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam. You should see some of the hadiths that some of the scholars, some of the huffaz of hadith present. Some of them say that Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, he would sometimes be seen with Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam, or that the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam would be seen speaking to somebody or shaking somebody's hand, and he would be asked and he would say, ذاك أخي المسيح, and so on. And these hadiths, they are not fabricated hadiths. Anyway, So al-KhaDir alayhi salam, he is someone who visits the awliya. Specifically now, mentioning somebody from our time, Sheikh Muhammad al-Harrani, who is buried in Istanbul. He was amongst the pious slaves of Allah, tabaraka wa ta'ala. And it was known that he was someone who was visited by al-KhaDir quite a lot, such that on his gravestone, they wrote in the Arabic language, min jama'at al-KhaDir, meaning that he is from the group of people that al-KhaDir would come to, alayhi salam. So Sheikh Muhammad al-Harrani used to know our Sheikh, radiyallahu anhu, and they were friends. On one particular occasion, one of our Sheikhs mentioned that he came to Lebanon. And actually, Sheikh Muhammad al-Harrani, he would walk from Syria to Baghdad, to Iraq, to go to visit Sheikh al-KhaDir al-Jilani, to visit the grave of Sheikh al-KhaDir al-Jilani. So once one of our mashayikh mentioned that he came to Al-Biqa', the Bekaa Valley, B-E-K-K-A, it is in English, in Lebanon, Sheikh Muhammad al-Harrani. And he mentioned that they asked him about al-KhaDir. And he mentioned, and this is in the house of one of our brothers, some of our brothers and sisters, those people who learn from our Shaykh, radiyallahu anhu. They asked him about al-KhaDir, and he said that al-KhaDir was here a short while ago and he just left. A person from among the students of Sheikh Abdullah told me that once I was with the Sheikh Abdullah in al-Madinah, al-Munawwara, in maybe 1979 or 1981, I'm forgetting now. He said, I was with the Sheikh Abdullah and I was sitting, and we would go at the time of al-Dhuhr and we would stay until about al-Maghrib. So we'd go at around 11 a.m. and then we would come back at al-Maghrib, whenever al-Maghrib was in those days. And he said that I would watch the Shaykh. He would look at a book and sometimes remain for an hour looking at one page. And he said that suddenly on one occasion, a person came in from the scholars of Al-Madinah, those that used to know Sheikh Abdullah. He said that one of these people came in and he said to Sheikh Abdullah while he was present, while his brother was present, he said that Ya Sheikh Abdullah, there are people in Al-Madinah, the scholars of Al-Madinah, word has reached them that you met al-KhaDir and that he put his hand on your chest and he made dua for you, he recited for you. Is this true? So Sheikh Abdullah, whenever he would be asked about this issue, because he was humble, he would try to change the subject. He would try to say, how are you? How is your family? Not like we might do, like maybe sarcastically. No, he would say, how are you? How is your family? How is such and such? But some people, yes, they would forget. And some people, they would bring it back and ask him again. So Sheikh Abdullah, he said that, yes, I met al-KhaDir. And it was the case that he met al-KhaDir in that place where they were. So this brother said to me, this Shaykh, he said to me that, well, I think that he wants to spend a lot of time here because it is here that al-KhaDir read upon his chest, and it is here that he experiences lots of blessings. One of our mashayikh said that on 4 different occasions, I heard Sheikh Abdullah being asked about this issue, and on 4 different occasions, he said the same thing. He said that, but he wouldn't speak about it openly unless he was asked. He said that al-KhaDir came to me and he recited on my chest. And after he recited and made dua for me, whenever I read something, I do not forget it. And this was the case for Sheikh Abdullah. Once there was a person who was debating with him and said to him that there's something in Sahih Muslim, in the book of Sahih Muslim. So Sheikh Abdullah said to him, no, it's not in Sahih Muslim. He said, yes, it is. I can prove it. And so Sheikh Abdullah said to him, complete humbleness, because sometimes when people, they're being brazen-faced, you need to mention a statement to them that will cut them off from talking. So he said to him, Sheikh Abdullah said to him, I know Sahih Muslim like the back of my hand. Like for one of us to say, like one of us saying, look, stop fooling around. Right? This is not a joke. These are the rules of the religion. I know Sahih Muslim in and out. And Sahih Muslim has thousands of hadith. Thousands of hadith. On many occasions, Sheikh Abdullah was tested on this issue. The Islamic University of Jordan, the professors and the lecturers from that university came and they asked Sheikh Abdullah many questions about certain topics that they were teaching, and he would answer them very simply. There was a person who had traveled the world looking for answers in many academic studies that he had wanted to put forward, but he wasn't finding the answers. He traveled the world asking these deep questions, and he came to a gathering once of Sheikh Abdullah, and he asked him, and Sheikh Abdullah answered him very, very clearly. Because Sheikh Abdullah, he spent a lot of time after learning the religious knowledge, the personal obligatory knowledge, and much more than that, he spent a lot of time reading up about what the different scholars had said. He firstly learned all of that, but then he would read a lot of extra. So this was narrated on many occasions about Sheikh Abdullah, that he told some people that al-KhaDir had come and al-KhaDir had recited upon him. Al-KhaDir also used to visit one among the awliya known as al-Rawas. Al-Rawas is known as al-Rifa'i al-Saghir. He was a great Rifa'i, a great pious person amongst the Rifa'iyya. He actually authored a whole treatise or a piece of work on which he mentions what happened with him and al-KhaDir. One of our mashayikh also, he mentioned that somebody told him, a person, one of our brothers who learns with us from our mashayikh, he said that this brother told me about his grandmother, that once what happened was that he was traveling to Turkey. So when he was traveling to Turkey, from Lebanon to Turkey, when he was traveling to Turkey, there was lots of snow, so the roads were blocked and so on and so forth. And the mother was very worried. So now he's telling this story. He said that the mother was very worried. So what happened was that she had made some food that he likes, and he's far away. And so he said, she said in her heart, you know, how I wish that my son would be here so he would eat some of this food, right? So on this particular occasion, and now what's apparent is that she was a pious person because she learned the religious knowledge. Sheikh Abdullah, when he went to Beirut, he had special lessons that he had organized for the elderly, especially the women among the females. This was when he was at the age of about 70 to 75. So he would give them due attention and teach them. And there are many stories about the elderly, especially the women, when they died or passed away, and the good signs that were seen. So this particular person, who was among our sisters, she was apparently a pious person. She reports, she then told her family that what happened was that al-KhaDir came to me. Al-KhaDir, he benefits sometimes the people in this nation, the Muslims in this nation. She said, al-KhaDir came to me and he said to me, put some of this food in a container. And so she said, I did, and then he left. Then when he came, when that son, that person that told our sheikh, he came back home, he brought the container back with him. And when he relayed the story, he said that I said to her, the food was still warm, the roads were blocked, and how is it that this food reached us? And it was still warm, and we were hundreds of miles away. And she said that this was al-KhaDir, alayhi salam, another one of our honorable sisters who made dua for 40 years, one of the students of Sheikh Abdullah. She made dua for 40 years. Allahumma laqini al-KhaDir, Allahumma laqini al-KhaDir, Allahumma laqini al-KhaDir. Oh Allah, grant me the ability to meet al-KhaDir. Grant me the ability to meet al-KhaDir, alayhi salam. She told that one day she was farming, and she had loaded whatever she was loading onto an animal. This animal was not able to stand because she had loaded too much onto the animal. And it was the time of al-Maghrib, and out in the fields at al-Maghrib, it can get a little eerie. So it was al-Maghrib time almost, and she was making dua, and she had previously made dua for 40 years to see al-KhaDir. So 40 years is a long time. Like the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, some people make dua, they don't get what they want. They make dua, they don't get what they want. They make dua, they say, you know what? So these people, they lose out. This particular person made dua for 40 years. Can you imagine how old she'd be? 40 years. So then she said that a man appeared to me, and he said to me, I am al-KhaDir. Suddenly he appeared. He said, I am al-KhaDir. And she was amazed. She said, merely by him touching the rope that was tied around the animal's neck, the animal rose and started to run really quickly. After 40 years of her making dua, it is mentioned that she mentioned that she saw al-KhaDir. And there are many, many, many other examples of this. Once Sheikh Abdullah was in somebody's house, and a lot of people would go with him. So there were a few people in the house, and this Sheikh told me that we were in the house with Sheikh Abdullah. So Sheikh Abdullah said, he sent everybody away. He said to them, you go do this, you go out, you do this, you go out, you do this. So he sent everybody away. He said it was me and Sheikh Abdullah in the house. So it was only us two left. So we went to sleep, we woke up, and it was al-Fajr time, so he sent everybody away. And we sat down. He said the Sheikh sat down and he was reading in a book. And I was sat across him and I was reading in a book. So he said, I looked up at the Sheikh Abdullah, and he looked up at me like this. And then, just like normal, so I continued reading. He said, then after that happened, I became drowsy. He said, when the eyes get really heavy, and he said, I became so drowsy, and I fell asleep holding the book. He said, while Sheikh Abdullah was in front of me, radiyallahu anhu. He said, I became drowsy, and I saw a man, a beautiful man, an elderly gentleman with a beard, and he was wearing white clothing, and I was in awe. I saw him and I was in awe. And then he said, I suddenly woke up and Sheikh Abdullah was looking at me. And he said, Ta'ibta? Are you tired? He said, Naam Maulana. So Sheikh Abdullah said, you should rest. You should rest. And there was nobody else in the house. So he said, okay. So he went, and he told me, he said, I went and laid down. When I laid down, I didn't fall asleep. So I laid down, and then after a few moments, I heard two sets of footsteps. So there was nobody else in the house. He said, I heard two sets of footsteps. So Sheikh Abdullah and somebody else. And then he said that I felt two footsteps coming closer to me. And he said that I knew it was Sheikh Abdullah, and that he came really close to me to check, to see. He said, I kept my eyes closed. I wasn't going to open my eyes. He said, I kept my eyes closed. And then he said that when I felt that Sheikh Abdullah felt that I was asleep, he moved away and he moved into another room where I couldn't see. He said that I strongly believed that this was al-KhaDir alayhi salam coming to meet Sheikh Abdullah. And there are other occasions where things like this are mentioned. Why is it that al-KhaDir meets people like that? Why is it that al-KhaDir comes to people like this? Because they have worked on themselves, worked to acquire the religious knowledge and then actually practice it. Some scholars said that one of the ways, one of the secrets or the great merits that would allow a person to see al-KhaDir is is obviously being pious, but above that also protecting oneself from the sins of the eye. If you want to see al-KhaDir, you have to have pure eyes. You have to have this purity in your vision. So to stay away from the sins of the eyes. So this is al-KhaDir alayhi salam. And I constantly, in my mind, go back to the statement of the Shaykh when he was told about al-Bukhari. He was told Maulana al-Bukhari believed that al-KhaDir has died. So Shaykh Abdullah said, وَرُبَّمَا ذَلِكَ لِأَنَّهُ لَمْ يَلْتَقِ بِهِ. Maybe that's because he didn't meet him. Which is, and this is, you're hearing this all at once, but Shaykh Abdullah, he would very rarely mention this, very rarely. He would very rarely mention this. And the pious people don't like to mention these things about themselves. There are many things that the pious people take to the grave. Religious knowledge, if they were scholars, and many other things that they take to the grave. I have a friend who was given a hair of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now the Wahhabiyya will say, what is the chain? What are the chains of narration, or rather the chains of this hair being passed down? We know the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam gave it to Abu Talha and Sulaym, and they distributed the hairs of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And these hairs have been passed down, and whoever they are passed down to, they write down the chain. This was given to me by such and such, and so on. So it is believed also that al-KhaDir alayhi salam took some of these hairs. And it is mentioned, it is known that al-KhaDir alayhi salam took some of these hairs. Some of these hairs, they might come from the chain of al-KhaDir. Someone might be given a hair of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam by al-KhaDir alayhi salam himself. So if we want to strive to be people who see al-KhaDir or have al-KhaDir help us and so on, we need to get our matters in order. Most people will live and die and not see al-KhaDir. A lot of people will live and die and not hear about al-KhaDir alayhi salam. But we hope, inshallah, because of blessed gatherings like this, where people come to learn the religious knowledge, to hear about the pious people, that blessings would descend, and perhaps, inshallah ta'ala, we would be aided in some way by these blessings. It just goes to show, hearing story upon story upon story upon story from our mashayikh, true stories, people who are, like us, normal people, who these things happen to. The only difference between them and other people is that they work hard to acquire the religious knowledge. Like we saw in this story of Musa alayhi salam, a messenger of Allah, going to someone who has a status not like the status of Musa. Although al-KhaDir was a prophet, but al-KhaDir knew some things that Musa alayhi salam didn't know. So Musa alayhi salam was eager to learn those things. This is how we should be. لا يشبع مؤمن من خير يسمعه حتى يكون منتهاه الجنة. A Muslim, he doesn't get tired, he doesn't get bored of hearing good things, even if you hear the same hadith again and again and again and again. There are blessings in the words of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. There are layers of understanding. Sometimes you hear a hadith, you might hear it 3 or 4 times, and then the 4th time you understand it in a way that you never understood it before. I experienced this myself. I heard a hadith, I'll give you an example. I heard a hadith in 2004. I heard a hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. Come 2015, and I'd heard this hadith maybe 700 or 800 times. Come 2015, I learned something about this hadith that one might say blew my mind. This is because a person needs to continue learning, continue having this thirst and this eagerness, this determination to learn. Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala will unlock certain bits of information for a person, an understanding that hadn't been there in the past. And then it comes. It only comes if you attend gatherings of religious knowledge, if you actually put the time to it. What do they say? If you want to master something, spend, 10,000 hours on it? Is that what they say? Or something like that. If you want to master anything, spend 10,000 hours on it. So you'll see people trying to master this, trying to master that. But now we are in dire need of people who understand the religious knowledge and who teach the religious knowledge. I'm going to speak more about this, inshallah, when we speak about the religious community in one of the upcoming lessons. About living in a community where people are eager to learn and to implement. That is the way forward. We'll stop here now, inshallah ta'ala. The next session is at... Really? I thought it was a 45-minute break. I thought it was a 45-minute break. Oh, when is the 45-minute break? Okay, so when's the next lesson? Okay, we'll meet back in 10 minutes. Insha'Allah. Let's say La ilaha illallah and as-salah ala nabi. Sorry, my mistake. La ilaha illallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim.